All right, so in general, the idea with these sigma, you start at the bottom number, you keep plugging in until you reach the top number. So we're plugging in 3, we're plugging in 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10. You start with the bottom number, end with the top number. Those are the numbers we're plugging in. You plug them into the formula, 2n minus 4, and then you're going to add them all up. So this is just how you would power through this. If you just wanted to brute force work your way through it, calculate each of these and add them up. But when you calculate each of these will produce a sequence that's either arithmetic or geometric. So let's take a look at it. Some people, and you included, should be able to figure out if this is arithmetic or geometric by looking at the formula. Is that an arithmetic formula or a geometric formula? Arithmetic, because it's like the mx plus b style, or dn plus a sub 0. So it is arithmetic. So since it's arithmetic, we can use the arithmetic formula for calculating a sum. You don't need every term. You need the first term, the last term, and how many terms there are. So the first term, plug in 3. That's 6 minus 4 is 2. The last term, plug in 10, the top number. 20 minus 4 is 16. So if you wanted to use just the formula, the sum is n divided by 2, a1 plus an, the first term plus the last term. The first term is 2. The last term is 16. And then how many numbers are there from 3 through 10? It's not 7, it's 8. You can count them up if you don't believe me. That's 8 numbers right there. So that's 8 divided by 2. That's how many numbers there are, counting 3, counting 10, all the way in between. So this is going to be 4 times 18. And you can use a calculator. You don't necessarily need to, but it's 72. So the answer is 72. If you didn't want to use the formula, like I said, you could just kind of power through this by doing every term and manually adding them all up without using the formula. So if you plugged in 4, that'll be 8 minus 4 is 4. Plug in 5, that's 10 minus 4 is 6. Now, you probably catch on to the pattern also because that number right there, 2, is clearly going to be D. Like, that's from the formula, D. So it's going up by 2 each time. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. And then obviously written on 60. And you could manually add up all those numbers and get the right answer as well. That's also going to equal 72. So a couple different ways to do it. You just need to know what does sigma mean. And then if you would like to, you can use the shortcut. Yeah. Yeah. On your final, there will be a question like this that is non-calculator about this difficulty. Non-calculator, you have to either do it manually or with the formula, it doesn't matter. But it will be a non-calculator, so you have to maybe use paper to multiply 4 times 18 instead of a calculator as much as you do. But that's about it. Okay, this one, by looking at it, you should see that it's got an exponent, which means geometric. It's got the exponent, that means geometric. So we need to know the first term for geometric. You have to know how many terms there are, the first term, and r. So if you wanted to, you could also go through manually. We're plugging in 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because the bottom number is 1, the top number is 5. If you plug those in, you get 3 to the first is 3. 3 squared, 9. 27, 81, 2 243. And then add all those up. That's like just the manual way of doing it. You could write those all out and then add them all up. Alternatively, you can use the formula. The formula for a geometric is A1 times 1 minus r to the n over 1 minus r. We know A1 is 3. We also know that r is 3 because you get multiplied by 3 each time. A1 is 3, r is 3, and n is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 numbers there. You can plug that into the formula. So that's 3 times 1 minus r, which is 3 to the 5th, is 243, over 1 minus r. So that's 3 times negative 242 divided by negative 2. Those negatives cancel. 242 divided by 2 is 121, which, if you multiply that, would be 363. That should be the same answer as if you manually added up all those numbers. You can use the formula or manually set them up. You can also check them on your calculator. If you want to type these into your calculator, they do have it, depending on the calculator that you use. You can go into Calc, Option first, Option, Calc, and we're looking for the sigma, which is right there. Now, this model of a calculator is nice because it just gives you the boxes to type in. So when we type them in, it's 3 to the variable. I prefer just to use X because that's easiest. If you want to type letter K there, that should work as well. And you fill in all the stuff. So since that's an X instead of whatever, I'm going to say X equals 1. And then the top number is 5. And it just automatically does it. If you don't have the type of calculator that gives you all the boxes, then you type it in that same order that I did. You would type that in as sigma 3 to the x, comma, x, comma, then the 1, and then you finish with the 5. You just have to type them in that order. It's a little bit complicated, but that's the calculator that most of you have. You have to type it that way with all the commas. Or just do it by hand. You don't want to learn how to use a calculator for it. Okay, here's another one. Ideally, you can look at this and tell if it's arithmetic or geometric. That looks a whole lot like a mx plus b or dn plus a0. That's exactly what it is, dn plus a0. So this is arithmetic. So you can use the formula for arithmetic, or you can power through it, or you can use your calculator. There's lots of different ways. This says start at 4, and then plug in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now, you don't really need all of them. You just need the first one and the last one, technically. So you got to plug in 4, and we got to plug in 11 at a minimum. You plug in 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3. You plug in 11, you get 11 over 2 plus 1. 11, 12, 13 over 2. That's all you really need, because then the formula for the sum is n divided by 2. From 4 through 11, that's 8 numbers. 4 through 11 is 8 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 numbers. N divided by 2. First number is 3. The last number is 13 over 2. That's our sum. So that's 4 times 3 plus 13 halves. You could solve this a lot of different ways. You could distribute, you could do whatever. If you distribute, that's 12 plus 26, which is 38. If you just type it into your calculator, you should also just get 38. What's that? 4, 1/2 a plus 1. So to type that in, sigma 1/2, so I'm doing 0.5, that's easier, x plus 1. Variable x, that's easier to type than alpha a, that's the only reason I do it. We started at 4, and it went up to 11. Make sure I got that right. 4 to 11, yes. So when I hit enter, it should tell us 38. Good, did it right. So you can use your calculator, you can do them by hand, you can plug in all the numbers and add them up manually, you can use the formula, it doesn't matter. Okay, number 16. Again, we've got the exponent, that means this is geometric. So since it's geometric, our formula for the sum is a1 times 1 minus r to the n over 1 minus r. We need n, a, and r. So plug in 1. And by the way, from 1 to 5, that's 5. A1 means plug in 1. When we plug in 1, we get 3 times 2 is 6. First number we get when we plug it in is 6. And then r is the number that has the exponent on it, so it's going to be 2. Or if you wrote out all of these, if you want to do it more by hand, you can just write them out. Plug in 1, we get 6. Plug in 2, you get 3 times 4 is 12. Plug in 3, you get 3 times 8 is 24. Notice how they keep changing by double, going up, multiplying by 2. So that's 48, and then the last one's going to be 96. And then you can add them up manually if you wanted to. I don't want to. I want to use the formula. So we use a1, which is 6, times 1 minus r, which is 2, to the n, so 2 to the 5th, over 1 minus r. So that's 6 times 1 minus 32, so negative 31 over negative 1. Six times 31 is 186. There's your final answer. You could also like I showed a couple of other times, you can type it into your calculator. Three times 2 to the variable. Variable starts at 1 up to, 5. Yep. It doesn't like that. I don't know why. I don't know why that won't work. Oh, I was just messing up parentheses. 186. I had 2 parentheses, I didn't close one of them. But what that also shows you is it doesn't matter what letter you use. You can, notice how I typed an A, that kind of, it doesn't matter. If you want to use the letters they use in the problem, that's fine. If not, use X, doesn't matter. All right, so that's all the sigma stuff. At the very end, we got a couple of questions. Just talks about really just part of what we were doing. It was actually, we were just doing it. But to find the common difference or the common ratio on these two problems, you can use the formula if it's complicated. Like this one's a little complicated to find the common difference. But there is a formula way back here. Further. Common difference. You subtract just 2 terms. The second term minus the first term. That's common difference. For the ratio, you just write them as a ratio. Second term divided by the first term. So the common difference is the second term minus the first term. Or the third minus the second. Or the fourth minus the third. It doesn't matter. Whichever ones you want to use. So that's 4/3 minus 1/2. If you're doing this by hand, you need common denominator. If you're using a calculator, then you just use your calculator. 4/3 minus 1/2. I think those numbers are right. 5/6. Notice how it has a common denominator. Because that would have been 8/6 minus 3/6 is 5/6. It's the same thing. That's common difference. You just subtract the 2 terms. Common ratio, you have to divide the 2 terms. You take second term divided by the first term, or you can just look at it. Maybe you can just look at it and know what it is. But if you struggle with it for whatever reason, you take the second term divided by the first term, or the third divided by the second, or the fourth divided by the third. It doesn't matter. And you just got to reduce it. Obviously, those negatives cancel out. 1296 divided by 7776. 1296 divided by 777. Good. Enter. It gave it as a decimal. If you just change it to a fraction, it's 1/6. So R is 1/6. That's cool. Okay, and then last two questions. Does it converge or diverge? You just got to find R. R tells you if it converges or diverges. If R is less than 1, it'll converge. If R is more than 1, it will diverge. So on A, I can see that the numerator's getting multiplied by 3 each time. So the numerator's got a 3 for R. The denominator is getting multiplied by 2 each time. So the denominator of R would be 2. 3/2. That's bigger than 1. So that means it will diverge. Bigger than 1, diverge. Less than 1, converge. For B, numerator is not changing. That means that the numerator of R is 1 because it doesn't get multiplied by anything. The denominator is getting multiplied by 3. That's less than 1. So it is going to converge. Okay.